But my name is Raymond Lee. I'm the founder of uxr.work. My background is in staffing for I started by forming a staffing agency in Los Angeles many years ago, 30 years ago. For 25 years, I owned an agency in San Francisco and placed a lot of kinds of creative talent, including UX designers and researchers. And UXr is an outgrowth of that work that I did. We just had a local staffing firm where we met candidates in person in San Francisco, and then we would place them in the Bay Area. And now, of course, this platform allows us to take researchers anywhere in the country and match them up with companies anywhere in the country, as long as they're both open to doing remote work. Anyway, so that's a bit about me. Susan, maybe just a quick intro about you.
My name's Susan Mercer, and I've been working in the field of user experience for over 25 years. I've focused purely on research for the last 10. I've worked in an agency environment, worked in-house as a researcher, and now I'm a research manager. So I understand the importance of finding the right project for the right skill set. And I'm working as a talent scout with UXr.work to find great researchers and help match them to wonderful opportunities.
I'm just so honored to work with someone of Susan's caliber. Right? She works for a TripAdvisor, a site we've all heard of. She's been a manager for years, a researcher for years. I actually interviewed her maybe, I don't know, a month or two ago, and she was asking questions about the site and said, who vets your talent? Who screens your people? You know, as a manager, she wanted to know. And it turns out she's the one vetting our talent. She's the one screening them. So I'm so honored to work with you, Susan, and grateful that we're collaborating together. Well, so let me give you just a brief introduction about our platform. And to do that, I have to turn to a PowerPoint slide because our marketing manager made them and loves them, but he can't be on the call tonight. But I just want to share, I'm going to share this slide because he works so hard to put them together. Okay, so here's our About Us slide. Oh, here, I've got someone waiting to come in. Okay, well, no, here's the About Us slide. So UX.work, you've read this on our website, but we're on a mission to gather the best researchers and to make it easier to hire and work remotely. I mean, this is our, just our passion, our calling is one, the idea that to create a platform specifically for researchers, because it really hasn't existed for this group before. And then the idea of remote work. I mean, obviously, because of what's happened in the last year, this has become much more prevalent. And so to have a platform that just makes it easier. So a platform where clients can trust the quality of the researchers because someone like Susan is vetting researchers. And a platform where researchers can feel comfortable. It's not like I don't know, Upwork or something, where it's kind of, you know, a race to the bottom in terms of, you know, you charge, someone internationally is charging $15 an hour. So what do you have to do to get work, you know? So we want it to be a platform for top quality researchers to do and to bring in companies that need top quality work. And so that's our vision, is to make this easier for both sides. And obviously we can't do this alone, right? We need the help of a lot of talented researchers. And that's the purpose of this call, is to reach out and find those people, you know, invite people to our platform who are passionate about research, who are very good at it, who have an expertise in research. And then that's what we have to offer to our clients, is your talent. Okay, I think that's enough. I think that's enough PowerPoint. Here's another slide. These sort of, what do? We connect employers with researchers, you know, we're in the middle and trying to make it a good experience for both, for the employees and the researchers. Okay, that's enough of the that's enough of the PowerPoint. If Phil watches this tape, he'll be pleased we used something that he created for us. So let me just talk for a second about our philosophy in finding researchers, because it differs maybe from a philosophy of, I don't know, a company like TopTal or something. That they promote that they try to work with the top 3% of researchers who, apparently have gone to the best schools and worked at the top companies. And the other 97%, I don't know what happens with them, I guess you can't work on their platform. But that, I guess I just want to say that's not our philosophy. Our philosophy is more like the Ratatouille, anyone can cook, or a great researcher can come from anywhere, I guess is what they say. And so it's not necessarily you went to a top school, you've worked for Google or Facebook, but we are discriminating. Obviously, that's what we need to do. We want great researchers, but you can have done that anywhere. Any company where you put your head down and really try to understand your users and solve their problems gives you excellent experience, and you become a domain expert in that small area. And that's what we're looking for. That expert, and let me tell you, of course, there are hundreds, dozens, hundreds of little specialties. They're big ones, B2B SaaS software, B2C consumer websites or social apps. So you may have experience there, but wherever your experience is, as long as you've got good experience, you really wrestled with the problems and tried to solve them at your company, you probably understand the problems other companies are facing too with their users. And you probably have a real sense for the users of the company you've been working for that translates very well to other companies. So I want Susan to talk more about this, but our challenge as researchers is to find your expertise, help you, and then help you market yourself, help you find a job. I shouldn't say market yourself, we really market you, but help you find work that's a good fit for your expertise. Because another one of our philosophies is, as important as as good experience, probably more important is a good match to the job. Like, you can be incredibly experienced, but if mismatched, if you're on the wrong assignment, that's a bad fit. You don't have what they need, and they don't get what they need. So once again, the need for a Susan Mercer to recognize your talent, match it exactly with the needs of the client, which she also understands very well. So I want to turn it over to Susan for a minute to talk a little bit more about that process.
Sure. Yeah, as Raymond mentioned, obviously skill set and experience are very important for me to understand where your strengths lie and what background you have. Some other softer skills we're looking for is to make sure we find researchers that are quick learners. I think that comes a lot along with the field that we're in. But working with a new client, you need to understand their business background very quickly so that you can find out from users what they need and uncover some of those things, those insights that the clients might not know to ask for. So that's a very important skill set we're looking for. We're also looking for folks that are very focused on research. And obviously you all have a passion for understanding the end user and advocating for them, and being very communicative with clients as well. That's one of the things I learned in my days in consulting, is when you're working with a new client, you need to spend a lot more time communicating with them up front to make sure that their expectations are being met and your expectations are being met, and that it's a good match. The process that we go through is we do have an online application where you can fill out some of the basic information, upload your resume, let us know what industries you've worked in as well. but then I do follow up with a one-on-one interview to get to know you better. And I'd like to see a sample of your work so that I can understand how you communicate your insights that you do uncover to the client, whomever that may be. And then we also do ask for endorsements from previous managers as well. No one knows how good you've worked, how much you are able to understand and communicate insights better than a manager you've worked with in the past. So we really rely upon that as well.
Okay, awesome, Susan. Thank you. Other thoughts? I don't want to cut you off, but I just want to, is that about what you wanted to say?
No, that's what I wanted to say.
Okay.
Did you have anything else to add?
I guess I just want to emphasize that idea of soft skills are so important. You know, sometimes there's a focus on hard skills, but in some cases, soft skills are even more important. You can be so talented, but if you're not communicating well with the client and you're working remotely, you're on the wrong track. You're not doing what they want you to do. All your talent and expertise might be for naught if the soft skills aren't there. And of course, in actually doing the research, interacting with research subjects, those soft skills are critical. Having the understanding to not be asking leading questions, making participants feel comfortable. Anyway, so many of those skills can rise above even the hard research skills. So yeah, there's a focus on that, and we appreciate that. So that doesn't just come out of Stanford and Harvard. Those soft skills come, from life experience, and so we're looking for those, and our clients, of course, want those. That you need those for successful engagement. All right. Well, we wanted to ask some. Okay, so that's kind of our intro. You just have a basic idea about what we do. Of course, there are a lot of questions left, but we wanted to guide some of our questions. I mean, we have sort of top 10 questions that we can go over, but we kind of wanted to guide them by asking a little bit about your goals, your pain points. So, Susan, maybe I'll turn it back to you. And if anyone's willing to volunteer, if you are working as a freelance researcher right now, what are some pain points that you have? If you want to work as a researcher, what are some goals that you have, fears? Anyway, if anyone would like to provide that input, we'll use that as we go through some additional questions. And if you don't want to, that's okay too. But if you do, here's your chance to get it on the agenda.
Yeah, I'd love to hear from anyone to share either some goals that you're working on professionally that you'd like to focus on in the near future, or some pain points you have with finding freelance work. So feel free to speak, or if you would rather type in the chat window, you can go ahead and do that. Does anyone feel like sharing?
Yeah, I can go ahead. I can share a pain point. As a reminder, I'm Imani. I'm based in New York, and I'm a UX researcher, of course. And I'm working on contracts full time now. And I would say the hardest part so far, my greatest pain point, is trying to figure out the scope of these projects, and also understanding how much I can actually handle. So can I take on just one contract at a time, 2, 3? I think that's been the hardest part for me, is just understanding the scope of these different engagements.
Great question. Great pain point.
Yep.
And that's one of the challenges as a person of one. You can't double book yourself. You're just your one resource. So that's a challenge. All right. Okay, go ahead.
Hi, this is Kriti Chandelier, and I am based out in Houston. I myself am a UX researcher as well, working on contract projects and freelancing them. Another issue that I face, since I'm based in Houston, where the design industry isn't so diverse, it's primarily focusing on oil and gas and medical or tech tech, some of the issues is that employers lack the understanding of what to expect from a UX researcher. They expect you to also know a lot of design and tech skills, like, Java knowledge and, how to work with HTML and those sort of things that don't really, come as a skill set that necessarily is required in the UX research domain. So yeah, that's another issue that I actively face when looking at projects in the Houston area.
That's a great one. I think as a domain, we still have a lot of education to do throughout various industries. Some are a little farther along than others. And I think that's something that at uxr.work we can help with in talking with the clients and helping them scope out their work and understanding what value researchers provide.
And also clarifying, you're not a designer, you're not a developer. What is the domain you're expected to work in? Research.
Yeah, I mean, luckily for me, I do come from a design background, so I kind of understand, the extras, but it's not a prerequisite, right? So, I mean, when you're looking at a job, you're not really clear what are you expected to focus on. Is it a research job or is it a design-oriented job? Just that clarity is like generally lacking in most job descriptions.
Kriti, you actually bring up a good point, which is, you do have the design skill to offer. So that's one of the other things that we want to probe in each of our candidates and find out what additional experience you can bring to the table for a client, because some roles are a hybrid role. And they say, look, if you've got a researcher who can do some design, we're small, we could use that. Or someone who has some product management, well, we need some of those skills too, as they're researching features, et cetera. So yeah, we want to understand what other skill sets you can bring, and then a client might need them and they would be included in the scope. Those are great pain points. Any others? Awesome. Goals for anybody who maybe on the other side isn't currently a contractor, but wants to, is considering it, wants to explore it?
Hi, I'm considering it, and I'm wondering, Imani mentioned scoping things and taking more than one contract at a time, and getting more jobs different places. And I'm wondering, like, is this a one-stop shop? Will I always have work as a contractor? Will I go to a lot of different places as a contractor? Like, how do I make sure I'm working regularly?
Lauren, fantastic. Thank you so much for that question/goal. I mean, first of all, awesome that you're exploring contracting with us, right? That's exactly what we want to do, and make this transition easier for people who are starting. Because will you always have work? No, you will not always have work. I'd say that's the biggest pain point of researchers. So hopefully that's an area we can help with, right? Maybe you have your own network of former employers or colleagues where you can get work, but if they don't come through for you, to have someplace else to go to find work can be helpful. So we'd love to be a resource there for you. Okay, awesome. I just want to see if there are any other goals, pain points, and then we can start to address them.
I guess I had a quick. Oh, sorry.
Charles.
Unless somebody else would like to go.
No, please.
I just I'm kind of an early career researcher. So I was wondering, as an early career researcher, do you think that there would be opportunities for me through your platform, or basically is that something I should be coming back to, kind of circling back when I've had more enterprise experience?
I think it's a great question. I want to turn it over to Susan to answer that. Do you feel comfortable talking about that, Susan?
Yeah, we do like to see folks with some experience. so that we understand your skill level and where you are, and what your expertise is at the moment. But that doesn't mean you need to have, 5 or 10 years of experience. We'd like to see 1 to 2 in general. And to feel confident that when we match you with a good opportunity, that you can bring your best to the client and provide value to them. Does that help?
Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think it's hard to start on our platform. I don't think we're a very good first job, but I think we'll get a range of requests from clients. And so if you're an early researcher, I think we may get some demand for that. Caro, I saw you raise your hand. Would you like to speak?
Yes, thank you. One of the questions that I had, or I guess one of the goals, is to diversify my portfolio. So I came from academia into an enterprise, and that was, that was my job. And then I had to move and couldn't take the job with me. So being, a remote freelance, being able to diversify and say, hey, I can do more than software as a service. I can also do things, finance or insurance or oil and gas or whatever, the client might have. And I think that that's actually one of the things that drew me to this was, hey, this is an opportunity to network beyond my network, to be able to diversify. So that's just one of the goals that I have for this.
Okay, awesome. Susan, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I think that's, I can completely understand that as somebody who's worked in multiple industries over my career. There's a lot about UX research that is transferable from one domain to another. I think the balance is that when you do that, you need to be extraordinarily quick at picking up on a new business and understanding their particular challenges and their particular end users. Because I think some clients do tend to look for researchers that have experience within their domain. Others are going to be more flexible with that. But understanding your skill set is part of what we need to do so we can figure out how to market you for the right opportunities.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, I'm sending the link to somebody who's, I'm just seeing their message now. That kind of cues us up for a question, Caro, because your question is one of the top 10 questions. If we had a prize, you get one. Top 10 questions people ask, which is, can I show the work that I do on your platform in my portfolio? And so really the answer is the same as it is with any client, which is it depends. But probably not. You probably can't put it on an online visible portfolio because this is someone's research they've just been paying you to do, and they have competitors who they probably don't want to see it. But it really just depends on that client. It may be in a domain that they feel comfortable letting the research be shown. Once it's completed, of course, you need to ask and get their permission. And I'd recommend you get their written permission before showing it. But like most things, even if it is confidential to some extent, you might be able to show it, tactfully as you're interviewing with an employer one-on-one, for example, not sending them a sample, sending your portfolio, but showing your portfolio in a way that's not allowing it to be disseminated. Most people agree that's an okay way to show work, even that's still under NDA. You can also, of course, scrub out the confidential names of the client, of anything that's really proprietary, to show the problem, how you approached it, what methods you used, what you discovered, what changes were made based on your insights. Anyway, so that's one of the questions, Susan.
Yeah, as a hiring manager, that's one of the things that I often do when I interview researchers, is ask them to, tell me the story, talk about your process. What was the problem? What method did you use and why? What was your thought process? And then what impact did that have? And you can often tell that story without revealing confidential information.
Okay, so let's keep going on some of these top 10 questions just so you can get some of them answered. The Susan, I'll let you take one if you want.
Sorry, I was on mute. One of the questions we get is, if I work with UXr.work, can I still work with my own clients? And of course, the answer is yes. What we do is we ask that you share us your availability to let us know when you're available. When we do find an opportunity, we'll reach out to you and talk with you and figure out if you're able to, if that is a good match and if you're able to take it. If you do get clients through UXr, we ask that you continue to work through UXr.work with them and not go work directly with them.
Okay, awesome. Another one is, do I have to pay a fee to work with the platform? No, there's no fee for researchers. Clients pay us a fee, right? They pay a percentage, depending on whether you're an independent contractor or an employee. You've probably seen it. We just published the rates on the site, but they pay a 19.9% markup if you're an independent contractor, 39.9% if you're an employee, and we're running payroll and withholding taxes and things like that. So anyway, no fee for researchers to work on the platform. Okay, so Susan, back to you for one.
This isn't my native video tool, so I keep missing the mute button. Sorry about that. What does it take to be a successful contractor? That's a question we hear a lot. We talked a little bit about it earlier with some of the soft skills. Also, as we alluded to, managing your time effectively. Don't taking jobs that you don't have the time available for, or being honest with us on the expertise to make sure it's a good match. Listening very closely to what the client needs and delivering on that. And being more deliberate about communications, as we mentioned before. Perhaps early on showing a sample of what you've started, saying, here's where I'm going. Is this going to work for you? Is this what you're expecting? And doing frequent checkpoints with them as well. And being proactive. If there's information you need from them or you're stuck, reaching out and saying, hey, I need this in order to continue working on this. Or I finished what you've asked me to do. I know there's more out there. What do you want to do next? Anything else to add, Raymond?
No, that's a great one. Wonderful. Okay, here's the next one I'll handle, maybe just briefly. We can go into it on the website, but what's the difference between a 1099 independent contractor and an employee? Of course, this is kind of a big issue across the country right now, with in California, for example, the legislation about Uber and Lyft drivers. But I mean, the definition generally hinges on how much control the employer has, or the client has, over the researcher. And that control can be exhibited in different ways. But one of our rules as a platform is to help determine whether it can be an independent contractor role or has to be an employee role, employer-employee role. And frankly, the preferences can go both ways. I mean, some researchers would prefer to be an employee. Employees are more typically on site, so more local jobs to wherever you live. Employees are protected with protections that are offered to employees, such as you're paid overtime, the employer withholds part of the taxes. Well, the employer pays part of your taxes, right? They pay 7.5% of your Social Security and SDI. They also withhold your taxes so that come the end of the year, you've got withholding to pay your taxes. Those those things don't happen for independent contractors. If you make $1,000, you're paid $1,000. It's up to you to put aside money that you're going to pay your taxes with come April 15th. It's up to you to pay your own self-employment tax. That's 15% of your income. When you're an employee, the employer pays 7.5% and you pay 7.5%. But when you're an independent contractor, you pay all 15%. So you pay 7.5% more of your income. Now, as we learned in California, despite those protections afforded employees, and by the way, I didn't even get to maybe the best ones, which are benefits, healthcare, dental, vision, paid time off, holidays, vacations, things like that. Despite all those benefits that are and protections for employees, a lot of people prefer the freedom of being an independent contractor. And of course, the biggest freedom is working at home, being able to work remotely. But a lot of employees enjoy that right now. So the lines are sort of getting blurred, right? Most employees right now have the freedom of working at home plus the benefits of being an employee. So once COVID is over, some of that will start to, separate out. But we frankly think the world has changed forever, and just more and more there will be freelance workers who want to work remotely as a career, permanently. And so our platform tries to facilitate that kind of work of, working remotely with companies anywhere. Then of course you're freed from working with just local companies. You living wherever you live can work with companies wherever they might be. And of course that lets you take whatever your expertise is and have a much broader range of clients to offer it to. For example, Kriti down in Houston, right? Now you could work for anybody, any client that's willing to have a researcher remote. You don't have to work in oil and gas anymore. You might be able to work in, whatever is your pleasure. Okay, anyway, I may have gone too far on that. But anyway, the difference between independent contractor and employee, it's important to get the definition right. That's one of the things we can help do, and make sure the employer and the researcher both have an understanding of what the level of control is if you're an independent contractor and if you're an employee. Employees can also be remote. It doesn't mean you're an independent contractor if you're working remotely. It's a little more involved than that. But anyway, that's a general idea of the difference between those two. That is one of our top 10 questions. Any follow-up questions on that? Or Susan, maybe I'll let you take the next one.
Nope. Okay. What do we require from you? We already talked a little bit about this one. We do, as I said, want to see your resume. We want to see examples from your portfolio. We want some endorsements from previous managers that you've worked with. And just to a conversation to understand your strengths, your expertise, and areas that you want to be focusing on. I think also we ask that when we do match you, that you do your best work to continue to build that brand for yourself and help us build our brand as well for providing quality user researchers. And communicating with us as well. I mentioned communicating with the client, but also communicating with us, letting us know how things are going, and if there is an issue, seeing how we might be able to help as early as possible.
Great point, Susan. Yeah, you not only represent yourself, you represent our platform. We're just getting up to speed. So these, people we placed this year, we really establish our reputation. So yeah, we appreciate you doing your best work for yourself and for us. I'll mention just one thing. One of the ways that we promote, that we help researchers find work, is promoting on our site. We're just working with Imani doing this, helping her develop a video, just a short 1-minute intro video where you highlight some of your background and experience, really where you highlight those areas of expertise, and then give employers a sense of what you might be able to do for them. So we'll help you create a video like that if you'd like to, if you're accepted, if you pass Susan the bouncer Mercer's screening. But if she thinks you're qualified to work on the platform, we'll help you put together that video that really just shows you the best you can be. And then we ask, if we're promoting you on our site, that there may be some employers who see you on our site but don't go through us, but find you through LinkedIn or something. So in that case, we ask you to redirect them to our site and say, look, I'm being promoted on their site. If it's not a client you've ever heard from before, there's some high likelihood that they came from us. And so in that case, say, I'd be happy to work with you, but I'd like to work through this platform. And frankly, we hope to become a useful enough tool that you prefer to work through the platform. Some of the issues we talked about earlier of scope, Imani, you talked about scope of work, kind of in setting up the contracts with an employer. That can take weeks going back and forth, contracting with them, negotiating rates. So that's one of the things we hope to take care of, and just allow researchers to research and not have to be marketers to find your next client, lawyers to set up contracts, bill collectors to try to collect the money when it's done. We hope to, if we can do those functions, we can free you up to do research, and that hopefully makes it more appealing even to work on the platform than work directly in some cases. But of course, it's your choice what you do. Okay, any other questions about those things that we discussed? We're about to the point where we can just open it up for questions and answers. I mean, just address specific things you'd like to address. Susan, any final points you'd like to make before we do that, or any questions or comments from the group? Susan, I guess I'll turn to you first.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what everybody's questions are that we haven't answered yet.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we have one in chat already. Do you work with researchers located outside the US? Okay, so we're focusing on the US. However, Canada, because of the treaty with Canada, we can work with Canadian researchers pretty easily. So US and Canadian researchers are the only ones we can work with at this point. We just aren't equipped to handle the complexity of researchers elsewhere. But, so authorization to work in the US or authorization to work in Canada, either of those are fine. That was through the chat. Perfect, I'm Canadian, comes back in the chat. Okay, awesome. Any other questions you'd like to anyone would like to ask?
This is Georgia. I do have a question, and I don't know if it's for Susan or whomever. I'm just curious, I've worked a lot on the vendor side of things. And so with regard to kind of putting together a portfolio and showing impact, so a lot of times we would do work that was proprietary, confidential, under NDA for different tech clients in the Bay Area and everywhere else. But how do you kind of measure impact or say impact? So we would give the research, do executive summaries, provide the research, but then a lot of times or oftentimes we don't really know what they did with it or how they used it internally, because that was proprietary, confidential. We were not part of those conversations, even though we would do repeat research for this same client. It's just once the research was done, they would take it and do whatever it was they did with it. So how do you kind of judge impact in that case?
That's a great question. That is a tough one. I ran into that when I was working in a consultancy environment as well. Sometimes you have to be honest and say, here's the findings we had. We had these findings. The client was pleased with them. We uncovered things that they didn't know before.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, you may need to just stop and not be able to talk to the impact because, like you said, this was confidential. It was handed off. We don't know what was done with it. If you're working in that kind of environment, people generally understand that constraint, I found.
Okay, thanks.
Great question. Any others? Well, we actually didn't address one of the top 10 questions. I kind of scrolled down through my list and I've forgotten it, but I was just reminded of it. The top of the questions we get is, how much can I make working on the platform? And of course, that's a tough one to answer generally, but what useful information can we provide? I mean, so we're running a marketplace, and there are two sides of the marketplace: the researchers and the employers, and we want to create great value for both sides. So on the one hand, we want to pay researchers their full due. We will not be an Upwork offering you ridiculous rates for your expertise. That said, we want to provide excellent value for our clients, and we don't want to give them ridiculous bill rates either. So one of our jobs really is to find that sweet spot where we get them the expertise they need, but we don't pay for anything more than they need. And frankly, that's where you might shine, having had whatever experience you've had, maybe just what the client needs, and maybe you've just had 2 to 4 years experience, but it's brilliant for this client and represents a great value for them. And we can pay you $80 an hour. That's worth it to them for this experience that you're bringing. And they don't need to spend $125 an hour for someone who has a whole breadth of experience, but may not come to bear on this project for them. So basically, one of our challenges is to find those rates and find what's a fair rate for you for your experience, what's a fair bill rate for a client, trying to find them the right match for them. And I mean, rates can, like we mentioned, we generally can't help people who are just starting out in research. So starting with a couple of years of experience, I mean, the lowest rates are going to be $50 to $80 an hour. I'd say mid-level rates are $70 to $100 an hour. And really, it just depends, beyond that. A lot of consultants charge $125 an hour, $150 an hour when they're working on their own. It remains to be seen what the most cost-effective solution is for each client. But that's our job, is when they tell us their need, to try to find them the researcher who can meet their need, most cost-effectively. In the end, they get to choose. So we also, offer a breadth and say, well, this researcher's $100 an hour, and this one's $110, and this one's $80, and here's what their background is. And the client says, I mean, they may or may not be rate sensitive. And they may say, well, I want all that expertise I can get for $110. I'll take that person. Who knows when I'll need it, how it'll come to bear. I'm willing to pay that rate. And a startup may say, look, we're bootstrapping. We can't afford any of these. What do you have for $50 an hour? We can pay 50 or something. And we'll try to fill that need too, right? So anyway, that's what I have to say about rates. Any further question about that? One of our roles is try to make fair matches regarding the rate. Pay rates for our researchers, bill rates for our clients.
I have a related question. It's
Okay.
not about pay rate, but it's about project scope.
Okay.
And who determines so when you get a ask for a project, you set up your research brief, you set up your estimate in terms of what needs to be done and how many hours and all that. who determines that? Is that determined on your end and then we complete that, or do we determine that and then the price is set for the project budget?
Okay, great question. There are two ways to approach projects. Fixed bid, which is what Carol's talking about, right? You estimate, and then scope is very important because you're promising to interview 50 subjects with these methods, tally all the results, give them the reports, and you're estimating it's going to take 200 hours or something. Most of our projects are hourly. We're set up primarily to do hourly, which makes the scope much less critical. In other words, we don't have to guess in advance it's going to take 200 hours. If it only takes 150, well, we're billing by the hour. If it takes 300, we're billing by the hour. The client's in charge to say whether to keep going, when to stop, or how to direct the researcher's effort. So that's one of the biggest aspects of the platform. You don't have to guess the scope because we prefer to bill hourly. There may be occasional times where a fixed bid makes more sense. And in that case, we're responsible for the fixed bid. In other words, we'll work with you to come up with the estimate and say to the client, okay, we think it's 400 hours. Here's what we'll produce for 400 hours. And we get rolling. And if it's off from that, we're the ones who've made the commitment to say that that's what it is. So we would continue to pay your hourly beyond 400 if we need to meet the deliverables. But that's going to be a rare instance. We're primarily set up to do hourly. Great question, Carol.
I have a follow-up, but I don't know if anyone else has a question before.
Why don't you follow up and then we'll ask if
so the follow-up is, so if we get into the projects and we realize, we need to recruit users, we need to do usability testing, or we need card sorts or whatnot. How does that work in terms of tools, recruitment, incentives for, or, not incentives, when you pay your participants?
Honorary, sure.
Yeah, honoraries, yeah. How does that work in terms of working with the client?
Another great question, which is presumably we'll solve it in the way that they're most comfortable solving. I mean, in the end, they're paying these things. If we need to advance the funds and then collect from them, that's how we'll handle it. Sometimes there'll be a smoother way. They'll have a tool that you can use for participant recruitment, and it will take care of paying them, etc. In the case that they don't, then we can forward the funds to do it and bill them to do it. I mean, generally, that's one of the other roles we take on as a platform, which is you don't have to go out of pocket with expenses, tools, etc. We're in a position to do that and then bill for whatever the expense was. Great question.
Thank you.
Was there anybody else who wanted to ask a question? Lauren?
Yeah. How much do the scopes of the project range in terms of hours?
Okay, well, I think that's a fair question, and especially for someone getting started. One question people have is, can I do this on the side to start? I have a full-time job. Could I potentially take on some small things to get started, maybe 10 to 15 hours a week, and get rolling before I let go of the security of my full-time job? Or maybe they don't even want to let go. They just want a side hustle, make some more money, get some more interesting projects. That's fine too. With most projects, that doesn't work. Most employers want the researcher full-time in this sort of hourly scenario, but for some of them it does work. Kind of the more consultant model, they kind of ask for a fraction of your time. Like they want a quarter of your time for 2 months, or 10 hours a week. So in that model, it might work better. But I guess here's the other thing I guess I want to be very clear about at the outset, which is, as we're lifting up this platform, our first endeavor is find the talent, find the researchers who are going to work with us. In other words, our mission is find the best researchers. That's step one for us, and that's what we're working on right now. And then our step two is market you to help find work for you with clients, and frankly, find our clients. So we're at the initial stage of this. And so as you come on and are qualified, we're still working to bring the client side up, but we need the researchers first. And so that's really where we are in this process. And I would expect, a few months in order to find something to come through. If we feature you on the website, something could come more quickly. But it's kind of a back and forth for us, which is recruit researchers, help find them jobs, recruit more researchers. We kind of expand slowly that way. And so we're really recruiting the first group of researchers who we hope to feature and market to clients. And so hopefully that's each of you on this call. Hopefully answers your question, Lauren. Any other follow-up?
Not right now.
Okay, great. Well, awesome. Other questions? Well, I hope we have been able to answer your questions. We've gone through some of the top ones that we get, and you've given us great questions and pain points. Susan, anything you want to talk to as we wrap up?
Looks like Carol has one final question.
Okay, good. Let's pick it up.
Sorry, this is why I'm a researcher, because I have many questions. Okay, so you said that you guys are just starting up and like you're looking for your first cohort and everything. Sorry, my husband's on a call. Aaron, you're looking for your first cohort. What does the timing look like? Like, how can we help to make sure that you guys hit your timelines? And what does it look for? What do the next, next quarter, next 2 quarters look like in terms of progress?
I think that's a great question, and I very much appreciate it. Really, the most helpful thing is finding people with expertise. If you're willing to record an intro video, that helps us to market you, and that gives us something to show clients as we bring them to the site and say, all right, here are the first researchers that we're representing. Like you say, our first cohort. That's a great way to put it. The more broad your skill set is, the more likelihood there is for a match as a client comes in with a need. I spoke of our willingness to work with any skill set that we find, that, whatever your expertise might be, even if it's somewhat specific or obscure. But when it comes to finding a job, it's nice to have a somewhat broad skill set or have worked on some of the more popular domains, mobile app testing or B2B SaaS applications, enterprise software, things like that. So it's really hard to get, for an individual researcher, it's hard to say what that weight might be. We may not get a client who matches to your expertise, depending on what it might be. But I guess what we can do is find the expertise, promote you, and really that's our job, is if we can find your expertise and promote you the best that we can, then I feel like we're serving you well as a researcher. And then the second part is, of course, bringing sufficient clients to the platform that you have a good chance to match. And that's our task over, like you say, the next quarter or 2 is to really lift this platform up. And that's why we rely so much on the early researchers that we place to help us build a great reputation. I guess I will say that's why I'm so thrilled to have someone like Susan working with me, because just who can question her capacity to screen researchers, right? She's been a manager for years, she's been a researcher for years. It's just brilliant to have that kind of expertise to offer clients and say, this is who's screening the talent for you. Well, here's one thing I want to say to close, and then Susan, you can say something if you want. She mentioned a link to register. I'll put up our email addresses at the end of this call. Before registering in our system, I want you to speak with Susan for her to get a sense of whether she thinks you're a good fit. She thinks really we might be able to place you. And once she's been able to give you that, okay, at that point have the link. So it's not a public link, we don't publish it out. We really just want that to be for the researchers who we've chosen to be on the platform. And so step one is connecting with Susan, letting her look at your resume and portfolio, and possibly having a one-on-one with you, although this has been great to get to know some of you this way. And then she can decide when to offer that link to you to get signed on the platform. And along with that then would be the offer to record an intro video, write a brief script, and allow us to promote you on the website. Okay, that's what I had to say, Susan. Any things you'd like to say?
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate that. Raymond, if you want to share our email addresses in chat, then just email me. I'll respond. I use Calendly to manage my calendar. So you'll be able to click a link and schedule a time with me. And we can talk a bit about your background and your experience, and we can go from there.
That sounds great. Here, I actually want to share our info through this awesome PowerPoint that Phil created for us. So Phil, when you see this, you'll know. All right, here we go. All right, here you go. So these are email addresses to follow up with us. And I guess I just want to thank you all for joining us. This is our first, this was our first call like this. And so this really feels like our launch. Of course, we've been working for a number of months, pulling things together, but this is really an exciting night for us to have this launch, to have a group of people who really our first cohort. And we hope if we're a fit for you that we can work together and supplement whatever business you might have going on your own, or help you as you step into contracting as a researcher. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.